I just have to say, here we go again. This is the third time in 2 months that the Democrat leadership has put this divisive and irresponsible debate on the House floor. And I have to ask, Madam Speaker, what are we doing here today on this War Powers resolution again? Our constituents are concerned about the impact of coronavirus on American lives and the United States economy, not partisan posturing. In fact, the WHO just declared that coronavirus is now a pandemic. Madam Speaker, that is what we should be focused on here today. This political war powers resolution is based on a false premise. It orders the president to terminate hostilities against Iran. The problem is, for the other side, we are not engaged in hostilities in Iran. I asked Secretary Pompeo that very question on February 28th, 8 weeks after the Soleimani strike, before our Committee on Foreign Affairs. Are we engaged in hostilities against Iran? His response was, we are not. Our military commander in the Middle East agrees. General McKenzie was asked yesterday at Armed Services Committee if we are engaged in hostilities against Iran or Iranian forces. And he said, as Secretary Pompeo said, no, we are not. I am a strong supporter of our Article I powers, as I know the chairman is as well. If we were to launch strikes in Iran, I believe that the president would need to come before this body to ask for a new authorization. But that, Madam Speaker, is not what we are facing. This text completely ignores the remarkable restraint that the president has shown over the past few months. He has used force only when necessary to protect American lives. I was with the president at the White House when he was deciding how to respond to Iran's shooting down of our drone. He would have been justified, I believe, in taking out launch sites, but he decided to de-escalate instead. He was very clear, saying, quote, I do not want to go to war with Iran. The January 2nd strike on Qasem Soleimani inside Iraq, not Iran, was not an escalation by the United States. It was an appropriate response to his deadly targeting of Americans and diplomats in Iraq. Soleimani has the blood of hundreds of Americans on his hands. Most recently, he organized an escalating series of attacks in Iraq, an escalating series of these attacks which killed an American, wounded multiple U.S. servicemen, and involved the siege of our embassy, an attack on our embassy in Baghdad. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, said the administration would have been culpably negligent had they not acted to take him out. The strike on Soleimani in Iraq was totally justified as self-defense under the president's Article II constitutional powers. Jay Johnson, President Obama's general counsel at the Department of Defense and Secretary of Homeland Security, a person I have tremendous respect for, and I worked with very closely, who I worked very closely with when I was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. In his words, he stated that Soleimani, quote, was a lawful military objective, and the president, under his constitutional authority as commander-in-chief, had ample domestic legal authority to take him out without an additional congressional authorization. This is the man in the Obama administration who approved the airstrikes against the terrorists. More importantly, the Soleimani strike was a success. Let me quote from a recent Washington Post article where they said the Revolutionary Guard, quote, now finds itself on the back foot, a notable change after successfully projecting its power in the Middle East over recent years. The Quds force, Quds meaning Jerusalem, that is their ultimate objective is to annihilate the state of Israel, has been significantly deterred from retaliating further against the United States, end of quote. But the Democrats cannot admit anything good could come from this president, and that has consequences. In my judgment, we are wasting precious legislative days and setting a terrible precedent of abusing war powers procedures. This will be the 5th time that this Congress, and in this Congress, that we are considering a war powers resolution directing the President to withdraw U.S. forces from wars we are not actually fighting, 3 on Iran and 2 on Yemen. Iran and its proxies are watching right now as we spin our wheels. And what they see, Madam Speaker, unfortunately, is not a united America, but a divided America that does not fully support the ability of our Commander-in-Chief to adequately respond to threats against Americans. Now is not the time to tie our Commander-in-Chief's hands. Now is the time to support our troops and to support our diplomats. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
I now yield 3 minutes to a distinguished member of the Foreign Affairs